I'm sure they had a reason like not to speak up, but because of the fear and not standing up for the rights, just now North Korea in a point where people don't even know what life can be look like.
Well, Solzhenitsyn was convinced that a totalitarian state could not exist unless everyone was participating in the lie. And it was Orwell. It's so interesting to me that it was Orwell that opened your eyes to that. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it's still really something.
That book, I think that's when I realized, everybody was responsible. And that's when I started thinking about speaking out.
That's when you started thinking about speaking out.
Yeah.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so you made a conscious decision at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why?
Because I knew the price of silence.
It is both gradual and it is sudden. Marxist, communist, subversive tactics require years, if not generations, to properly germinate, for the soil to be properly prepared, for people's willingness to divorce themselves from what would be considered traditional values. If you can plant subtle ideas over a long period of time, all it takes is certain tipping point or crisis events, as you pointed out, to capitalize on in order to begin revolutionary changes within a society.
Yeah, although right now they're using the excuse, I don't know what they do. You can tell me what they do in North Korea, but here they're using the excuse is keeping people safe. I mean, in North Korea, it's straight up, we'll kill you, right?
No, it's all manipulation. They say that our enemies, of course, American bastards, right? They try to attack us. So it's like in 1984 Georgia, where there's enemies always trying to attack us. And then our dear leader, who's brave enough to defend us and keep us safe. Therefore, we have to obey. They are never gonna say, I'm doing this for my sake. They're gonna always say, it's all for your sake. That's always the manipulation comes.
That's scary. That makes the current situation here a little bit more concerning.
Yeah. Freedom is not free. There's a price for it to pay it for.
If you had the privilege of being born into the relative freedom of the Western democracies during their golden era, you may assume that freedom is common and easy to come by, and you may very well take freedom for granted. But if you look back throughout human history, you will realize that freedom was not common at all. As you look through the many centuries of human events, through the rise and fall of various empires throughout the ages, you realize that it was tyranny, not freedom, that was the prevailing mode of societal operation. Think of the thousands of years of feudal rule, during which the majority of the population lived as peasants and serfs. In these societies, the hope of gaining a meaningful education, access to new opportunities, and upward mobility was almost non-existent. The majority of human history was brutal, cruel, and primal. Freedom was scarce, found only in brief pockets of time and space, and as such, it was highly coveted and appreciated. Freedom was not the default. It was the anomaly. You don't even have to look as far as ancient civilizations or medieval times to see that tyranny was the prevailing norm throughout human history. Simply look back less than 100 years ago to all of the horrors of the 20th century, including those wrought by both National Socialism and communism. Even after World War II ended, both Stalin and Mao continued to commit atrocities against their own people, and it is estimated that 20 million innocent Russians and between 40 and 80 million Chinese lost their lives under communist rule. The Nobel Prize-winning Russian author Alexander Solzhenitsyn details the horrors of the Soviet Gulag system, which he suffered through personally in his monumental book, The Gulag Archipelago, though sadly, most people in the West have never even heard of Solzhenitsyn. Even today, in the so-called civilized and modern world, the entire country of North Korea remains enslaved under brutal dictatorship, where people are kept in line through mass starvation, and where people lack access to the most rudimentary medical care, and where dissidents are imprisoned in concentration camps, beaten and killed by the hundreds of thousands without a hint of mercy. The North Korean defector Yeonmi Park describes her terrifying experiences growing up in North Korea, as well as her harrowing escape during her incredible interviews with Professor Jordan Peterson, Patrick Bet-David, and Lex Fridman, and I highly recommend them.
And adults telling them, like, don't eat those, you're gonna get sick from it. But of course kids don't care. Like, even finding a rat is delicacy. Because even finding a snake is a big prize. You don't find those like often.
So they were excited to find a rat to eat.
Yeah,
so they were catching them with their hands.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course they do catch them around with their hands. And these parts of human bodies, like she was on top. That's why I was able to see her wearing this flower and pants till this. And then like her eyes are so hollow. It's like when you look at the human body, like nothing is left. I think that's what. It's not like just death is sad. It's just like how it becomes nothing. So empty inside. She does not know the shame or pain. Just she was lying there like that. And you see children just chasing them and laughing and try to catch the rats.
And the children didn't feel anything being around the dead bodies. Just it was normal.
It's our daily normal thing. Seeing a death is like our daily life.
That's the thing, like what kills me to this point about my father is not like of course I would be grateful he ever lived in freedom even one day. But the heartbreaking thing is he didn't even know life could be this free and life could be this beautiful. He didn't even know that, like life could be so different for other human beings. I just wish he knew before he goes, so he doesn't remember this life so hard, it's filled with the sadness, you know. And that's the thing with North Koreans, we are talking with different degree of oppression. They don't even know life can be this way. And yeah, so that was my time of understanding what happened and started believing in this freedom.
Citizens in the Western democracies tend to think of tyranny as a distant threat that could never occur in their own lands, something only found in the history books and not something applicable to their own lives. Most people are not even aware of the modern-day atrocities being committed in places like North Korea and are more concerned about celebrity gossip, TikTok, and reality television. Most people take their luxuries and freedoms for granted, as if they will always be there no matter what. Most modern Americans never stop and reflect on the fact that the prosperity and freedoms of today are only possible because of the selfless courage of the heroes of the past, who often paid in blood to ensure the freedom of future generations. To explore this idea further, let's rewind more than 2 centuries, back to the time of the Revolutionary War and America's founding. Washington, Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin envisioned the United States becoming a peaceful republic where every person would be respected as an individual and free to pursue their own dreams and happiness without harassment from an overbearing and tyrannical government. A land where civil liberties and God-given rights would be protected by an elegant constitution, enforced by honest elected officials who were meant to be honorable public servants. These great men led the Continental Army through bitter struggles and countless battles. They fought and suffered and bled, all to make their vision a reality. And though the world thought it was impossible, a new, free nation was born. How many Americans today truly stop and ask themselves whether we are actually fulfilling this vision, or whether we have drifted so far from it that our founders would not even be able to recognize what this nation has become? Stop and think for a moment deeply about the condition of the modern, so-called free world. How many decades has it been since our currency has been backed by gold? How many dollars have been printed in just the last few years? How long is this sustainable economic policy? It is not difficult to see that such policies have led to increasing inflation and stagnant wages that have disproportionately hurt the middle class and the working class, the very backbone of our nation. Why are the big Wall Street banks always bailed out by the federal government, while thousands of small, family-owned businesses are allowed to flounder and die? People recoil at the thought of how the mass media in authoritarian, fascist, and communist regimes were controlled by only a handful of individuals. But is the modern situation really that much better? How is it that the entire mainstream media in the US is controlled by only a handful of mega conglomerates? Why are thousands upon thousands of our bravest, strongest, and most patriotic men and women who wear the uniform being sent to be killed and severely wounded in distant lands? What did 2 decades of fighting and $2 trillion spent in Afghanistan achieve? Did the security of the United States actually increase? Or did those astronomical costs only serve to benefit a small elite within the military-industrial complex? Why were those trillions of dollars not spent instead on fixing America's rapidly declining infrastructure, education, and healthcare systems? In Orwell's 1984, he described a dystopian government that pushed its people into perpetual warfare while simultaneously repeating the propaganda slogan, "War is peace." Look at the message promoted constantly by the American corporate media, pushing for endless US military engagements throughout the world in order to uphold the so-called greater good. Does this not ominously echo the famous words of Orwell's book? Have the American intelligence agencies become too powerful? They now have the ability to spy on anyone on the planet, with the ability to access any email or text message with little to no oversight. Furthermore, how much data do the big tech companies gather on every one of their billions of users, every single hour of every single day? Is it safe to allow these mega corporations to know so much personal information about you? Are they gradually becoming the big brother that Orwell warned about? Even the horrific tyrants of the 20th century could not have dreamed of the omnipotent level of surveillance power held by the alphabet agencies and the big tech corporations. What happens when the next generation of tyrants takes the reins of such power? How many countless billions of dollars are spent each year by corporate giants to lobby the US government? Just take a step back and think about it. Isn't the word lobbying itself just a fancy euphemism for legalized bribery? Thus, it would lead you to ask, who holds the real power in the United States? Do we still live in a true republic, or is it day by day becoming more and more of a corporate oligarchy? Freedom of speech is one of the core founding principles of the United States. The First Amendment is one of the main reasons why so many people risk their lives every day to flee authoritarian regimes that come to the US, such as the thousands who flee Cuba by makeshift rafts every year. And yet, with the rise of cancel culture, which ruthlessly attacks anyone who dares to speak out against prevailing dogmas, does freedom of speech even really exist anymore? The entire point of the First Amendment is to allow citizens to say things that are unpopular, controversial, and may offend other people. And it is not difficult to see that cancel culture is leading down a very dark road. Is the United States the peaceful and free republic our forefathers wished for us, or is it slowly and steadily moving towards becoming an Orwellian police state? Would our wise founders even recognize what the United States has become? Sadly, only a small portion of the population dares to question the mainstream corporate narratives and to think for themselves. Freedom requires a great deal of courage and strength to defend, and thus the majority of the population actually will always choose the safety of the herd over their sacred freedom. However, if you have watched this far, you are most likely not one of these people. You are different, and you have likely known this deep within yourself for some time. You do not fit in with others, and you do not think like others. Most likely, if you resonate with this message, you are one of the new patriots of this world. Whatever your ethnicity or religion or creed, know that you are part of a new generation of heroes, a new league of extraordinary gentlemen and ladies in the tradition of America's founders. The new patriots of the modern era do not fit a narrow stereotype and cannot be typecast. They come from all backgrounds and yet are united by their courage and their willingness to go against the grain. Develop yourself into your best selves, into the heroes you are destined to become. Develop the poise, bravery, and honor of George Washington. Self-educate yourselves so that your intellect is on par with Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin, and do not be afraid of learning from various perspectives that may challenge your long-held assumptions. Become as tough and tenacious as President Andrew Jackson and General George Patton. Understand that the true battle is not between left versus right. It is not black versus white. The human body is merely a temporary vessel, and it is the mind and soul that are truly important. It is not religion versus religion. These are all false dichotomies perpetrated by the control system and are primitive forms of tribalism meant to make humanity sink to its lowest levels. The true battle is freedom versus tyranny, free speech versus the cancel culture mob, free thinkers versus the thought police, patriots versus the matrix. In the year 1775, an American patriot by the name of Patrick Henry spoke the immortal words, "Give me liberty or give me death." He delivered this speech with such conviction, power, and ferocity that these words inspired both George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and the American Declaration of Independence was written less than a year later, after which there was no turning back. A ragtag group of American farmers had made a decision to challenge the most powerful empire on planet Earth at that time, against all odds, and somehow, miraculously, they prevailed. Patrick Henry's words will echo throughout eternity because they convey a timeless and self-evident truth. Your freedom is sacred. It is not granted to you by a government or inept bureaucrats hiding behind their desks. It is given to you by the supreme creator of the universe, and as such, it is truly a divine gift. And if there is any lesson to be learned from Yeonmi Park, as well as Orwell or Solzhenitsyn, though freedom may be a sacred human right, it is often a fragile thing, and as such must be protected by courageous and vigilant individuals during every single generation. At times, in the modern world, the situation can seem hopeless. Big Brother seems to grow more powerful every passing year in every corner of the globe. But understand, all the armies of the world cannot stop ideas, and certainly cannot stop the truth. And thus, never allow your mind, nor body, nor spirit to be enslaved. Never be afraid to think for yourself. Never be afraid to stand strong and to speak your own heart and mind. The world needs you now more than ever. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. My goal was to create an artistic video that explored the nature of both freedom and tyranny, as well as my admiration for the wonderful Constitution and founding values of the United States. And hopefully I created something that resonates with freedom-loving patriots around the world. With all of the infringements upon civil liberties and fundamental rights in the Western nations during recent times, things can seem rather bleak. And these recent events have been a big motivator for why I'm currently traveling the world to explore and to learn about various new cultures and to find places that still feel free. However, I do believe that there are a lot more free thinkers and reasonable people throughout the world than the mainstream media would lead you to believe. And so I felt quite passionate about creating something cool and motivating for the everyday patriots across the globe who have been ignored and marginalized by the mainstream media for so long. I obviously admire Solzhenitsyn, Orwell, and Ms. Park very much, especially the incredible spiritual strength of each of these individuals. And with this video, I really wanted to help get their message out there further. And hopefully this video is a reminder to the free people of the Western democracies that if they are not vigilant and brave and willing to speak up, their sacred freedom can be lost in less than a generation. If you found the video valuable, please like and subscribe. My channel explores not only philosophical topics like this one, but also self-development, spirituality, and foreign cultures. My channel is quite diverse in its topics, but I really put a lot of effort into each and every video to ensure that each one is very valuable for those who follow my work. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.